Very nice to see everybody on this Chara morning. Chara is a green tea. By the end of today's session, you'll have tasted one of the very best green teas that China has to offer. And I'm really excited to share this with you because for those of you who haven't tasted it, for those of you who have a prejudice against green tea, this is a great opportunity to meet in the middle and see what it is about this tea that brings you over to the green side. All right, it's been a great week. Let's just start right on into Chara because lots to cover actually today. Oh, and part of what I should tell you in the beginning is just make sure you take really good notes today because this whole set, the set of three, are all greens. So we got Chara, and then we followed it up with a very different green from Yunnan, green javelin, and we end up back in Hunan. Now, why do I say back in Hunan? Because Chara technically is on the border of Hunan and Guangdong province. Evocative is in northern Hunan. So it's actually quite a distance away. And the characteristic of the tea is quite different. So let's take good notes today and you'll have something to compare over the next 2 weeks. So, there's always lots of different places to be able to start. And I actually wait until this very moment to make a decision which place I'm going to start. And today, I've decided to start with legends. I love legends. I love science too, but we're going to start with legend. So, what's the legend involved around this tea? And actually, now that we're thinking about it, who in the world drinks this tea? So in China, all the great tea aficionados have heard of this tea. So I ask you this, what percentage of those tea aficionados has actually drunk the tea? Almost zero. It's a very low percentage because there isn't that much produced, but it's very famous. I'll tell you what, if as much Chara was produced as there is Dragonwell would have been eclipsed. That's how good this tea is. All right, I said we're going to talk about legends, and all of a sudden I'm off talking about other things. You're not very surprised though. And you also knew I was going to circle back to legends. So there's an ancient Chinese emperor, Yan Di. And this guy, he walked around China. Part of what he did was he's very interested in Chinese herbal medicine, interested in developing herbal remedies. So he tried lots of different things. So in this border region between Hunan and Guangdong province. Oh, and by the way, when he traveled with that era's best friend. That era, the best friend was dog. So he traveled with the dog and they went everywhere together. Really best pals. And so one day he eats this golden fruit, which he's never seen before. And after he eats it, starts with digestive trouble. If it had ended with digestive trouble, then this tea wouldn't have become famous. But no, he starts to feel faint. Now, man's best friend is very sensitive to changes going around and detected that the emperor was having a hard time. And the emperor is having a really hard time walking. He's feeling that faint. So this dog is credited with grabbing the sleeve of his arm, biting on the sleeve of his arm and dragging the emperor onto this island and deep into the island. And the emperor is losing it step by step, more and more faint. And finally, boink, that's it. The emperor's not dead, mind you. But the dog exhausts. And actually, the dog ends up dying. But what happens to the emperor? Well, as it turns out, this particular area, there's lots of mist, there's clouds on the mountain all the time. This small microclimate is an incredible microclimate. And the dog had dragged the emperor under tea trees. And the dew from the tea trees. Remember, the emperor was faint, passed out, mouth open, drip, drip, drip. Tea essence from the dew falls into his mouth. And what happens? Predictably, as we all know, revival. Emperor is revived. And he's very sorry to have lost his dog. So, how does he, in quotes, make it up? Well, hard to make it up to a dead dog, but you can at least memorialize the dog. So he called this mountain Dog Brain Mountain. Now, that doesn't sound good in English. And I tried to think of 1,000 different translations I could give you of this that would make it sound more pleasant.
Smart Dog Mountain?
Smart Dog Mountain. You know what? That's a much better translation. Of course, nobody who really understands Chinese would look at that and say that's a good translation. But since it's a contextual translation, you know what? Let's go with Smart Dog Mountain. And therefore, the tea from this mountain is smart dog tea. And that's what we're going to have today. So that's the relevant legend that we had to start out with. Now let's see if I can slip. Oh, I'm early. I have plenty of time. Let's go ahead and slip over into science. Legends to science is always fun. So where are we going to go for science today? You know, usually I'm in China. Occasionally I wander to Japan. But it's been a long time since I've been to Europe. Eh? And let's go to another ancient culture in Europe, Italy. And let's see what they're saying about green tea. So they had these scientists study people, and this is really relevant for today. They had these scientists studying a control group of people who got COVID. And the control group was against a group of 4,000 who were going through normal, whatever normal is these days, medical procedures to try and help them get through COVID. Now, what was this group of 30 or 40 volunteers? What kind of procedure were they going through? They were going through high catechin intake procedure via green tea. So what result ensued, and how is this relevant to all of us? Glad you asked that question. On average, remember, so let's start off this science discussion with all the right disclaimers. Does green tea cure COVID? The answer is no. However, based on the tests that they did in this experiment that they did, they found that the median time of being positive, testing positive, was 9 days. And that's for this control group. Now, in the non-control group of the 4,000, they found the median time of not being negative, I said that backwards, of being positive, 31 days. So 31 versus 9. Furthermore, what else did they find? They found that this small group, and albeit, let's remember, let's get all the facts on the table so that you don't leave saying, I went to this presentation this morning and it's clear that green tea, if it doesn't cure COVID, it nearly cures it. That's not what I'm saying. Let's listen to all the facts. This 30 to 40 people had no long COVID sufferers. X number of people out of the 4,000 ended up with long COVID. So what was special about this group? And so the question naturally comes to mind. Okay, were these all people related to Thor, maybe? People with superhuman powers that somehow, they got the COVID, but they were able to throw it off in good order and not have long COVID or any other issues. The answer is these were 30 to 40 people picked at random. And as far as I know, none of them were related to Thor. So really, what this small study is saying is catechins seem to work within the body as a potent, how do I want to say this, as a potent reducer or reducer of symptoms related with COVID, and also very potent in terms of turning you from positive to negative. So that's what the results of this are. And the scientists themselves are claiming no more than this. They say it seems like, that's a reasonable assumption, and we need to continue to do more research. But why am I telling you this? Because in this heavy surge era, there may be some things that we can do right now before the science becomes placebo-driven, double-blind test-driven, and you get all the results. It does you no good if in 3 years, all the results, you have 100,000 people, whatever the minimum numbers are supposed to be to prove it's true, when you can look at these potential results and have a healthy beverage. And the worst you can say is, well, I had a healthy beverage. Maybe it didn't, do what it did for these other people. I had a healthy beverage. So that's why I'm sharing. This was a fascinating article, and this article is from 2021. So, and obviously they're still doing more research on this because, like with any scientist, you keep asking the questions. Well, what exactly is it about the catechin that somehow inhibits the development or the expansion of the COVID virus within a human? So naturally, they're looking at stuff like this. And who knows, within maybe this week, they'll publish another article, which I'll be able to share with you next week. All right, so that's the science for this morning. We're liable to have more science because I have no self-control. On the other hand, it's almost time to start brewing. Yes?
What was the incentive for the study, as in who came up with the idea to do the study in the first place?
So the questioner asked a great question. Who had the idea to do this type of a study? The answer is, I don't know. However, I'm guessing must have been some devoted Italian scientist, tea drinker, who all of a sudden thought, hey, catechins work with, oh, wait a minute, I am remembering now. Yes, you know what, at the beginning of the article, they said something about the fact that that catechins in general seem to have some antibacterial, antiviral properties. That's exactly what led them to think about this as a potential. All right. So I've advertised this tea as one of the best green teas you'll ever have. You know what? Maybe we should go get to work proving it. So without further ado, it gives me so much green tea pleasure to bring the tea master to demonstrate Chara for you.
Chara. Yes. Hey, good morning. 早上好，你们好。好，我说国语哦，你听不懂哦。Yes, good morning. We do green tea Chara. So yeah, I like tea. So looking my, the tea bar. I told you, I'm at home. This is my space. The here same thing. My home same thing. Very small. So this is my style. So today I used two glasses, 4 glasses. Okay, just help me.
Yeah.
Take a,
So you see her tableau, 4 glasses. And again, knowing that this is Chara, you can do it, of course, at 175 degrees if you want, 0 problem. But if you dissipate steam and you get it down a little lower, it becomes even slightly brighter. So Sophie has set this up so she can get this dissipated even faster.
So dissipating steam causes reduction in heat.
The question is, does dissipation of steam cause reduction in heat? Yes. So 2 things are going on at the same time. You have reduction in heat and the actual dissipation of steam. And as it turns out, yes, dissipation of steam also leads to the reduction in temperature. So she rinsed both glasses with 200-degree water. Why did she do that? She wants to make sure that there's no leftover soap spots or anything on the glasses which could distract from the aroma of the tea. And now she's using 175-degree water, dissipating the steam, reducing the temperature. And when you think about this, why go through these steps? You know what? Why don't you just get up in the morning, just like with coffee, use 200-degree water, don't think about it, just brew it, just consume. There are reasons not to do that. Of course, at home, you can do anything you want. That's not the point. The point is, when you're dealing with these teas, we've gone through a lot of trouble, a lot of steps to figure out at the end of the day, which brewing methodology is going to get you best flavor. These steps also create a brew where you don't have things getting into your tea which interfere with your ability to enjoy it. So if you let tea brew for, say, 30 minutes, are you just getting the polyphenols in that tea, or are you getting some other things? Do polyphenols and other compounds change? And they do. They encroach ground, and therefore you're not getting the same quality of beverage that you think you are. More isn't better, and that's an interesting thing. You have to be aware of that when you're dealing with tea.
What is the reduced temperature of the water?
Oh, anywhere from 170, in between 170 and 175. We're not looking for precision. Anywhere in there works just great. So you notice in the heated cup, she puts the 4 grams of leaves. And you set your timer for 2 minutes. Now, as it turns out, I'm standing this far away and I can smell those leaves in that cup. This tea is extremely distinctive. Oh, and it's beautiful too when you pour the water in. So take a look at this. This is, you have white and green mixed on top, and look inside. You've got these leaves floating around. And again, I'm standing here and I'm smelling this thing already. It's a good smell. So there's lots of things I'm going to wander across today, but let's do the standard first. Let's tell you about the process. You pick. This is basically a bud and a leaf pick. It's a first spring pick, early spring pick, so it's early March. You wither for a very short amount of time, short being 45 minutes to an hour, and then you get heat. You apply it's about 300 degrees heat, and you fry it quickly. And then every farmer's doing this a slightly different time, and they're looking for that right aroma. You take it and immediately remove it from the heat and immediately roll it. This is a delicate roll, and you can tell looking at these leaves how delicate they are. This is incredible. They're dealing with things you can barely see, and they're doing this with big hands and creating this shape. After they've created the shape, they pick through anything that's not supposed to be there, and then they briefly bake it, to get the water content down to what it's supposed to be so that it will not mold. And that's it. That is Chara. Now, I did that in under 2 minutes. So that made it sound simple. But you notice in that 2 minutes, I spent quite a lot of time on the rolling because it's hard to do. And this stuff is hard to handle. It's so tiny. Tea Master is deliberately, not in a huge hurry, taking her time and separating the leaves from the tea liquor. And you notice she didn't create a bunch of bubbles. And a customer was in the shop yesterday, actually one of you, and noted that my tea brewing technique was far inferior to the Tea Masters, because when I brewed a cup of tea, there were bubbles everywhere. I admit this is true. I was sloppy, and this is the right way to do this. So let's enter the tea quality arena. And let's first smell these leaves. What a treat. Now, of course, I'm not supposed to influence what you're going to say. So if you don't think it's a treat, you're free to say, this was not a treat. And I'm okay. I'm okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and enter the quality arena. So this was done between 170 and 175. So you can take a larger sip. And what am I going to be looking for? I'm going to be looking for tea density. Is it thick? Is it thin? I'm going to be looking for dryness in the mouth. Where? I'm going to be looking for, is there a syrupy quality or is there a juicy quality? These are all the things that are related to mouthfeel I'm going to be looking for. Then I'm going to see what the aftertaste is. And lastly, I'm going to see what energetics exist with this tea. So again, let's look at this color, because you're going to want something that looks like this color-wise. And for me, I describe this as a light green with just the slightest, probably just from the lights, tinge of yellow. It's really more green than anything. I'm going to look in here and see all these trichomes. I'm going to be saying to myself, I'm going to live forever because there's so many trichomes in here. And now I'm going to enter the quality assessment. Okay. So I'm going through those steps that I just talked about, trying to determine how it behaves in my mouth and what sort of aftertaste I'm getting. I'll be paying attention for energetics. Energetics, we remember, occur during the course of drinking, and they may change actually as you're drinking. And we're not in a hurry. This is T rhythm. So I'm going to go through and check the preliminary findings from the first sip. Wow. Okay, so it's your turn to brew. So I'm going to have the tea master go ahead and brew with you. We're going to all set our timers for 2 minutes. Bag number 1 labeled Chara is what you're going to use.
The dried leaves appear almost feathery in texture and curly. How important are these physical aspects of the tea leaves to brewing outcomes?
So the questioner asked a great question. Makes the comment first that the leaves are feathery, just really delicate looking. And the questioner is wondering, what effect on brewing does that have? Is there a relationship between how they look and brewing outcome? And the answer is absolutely yes. The delicateness of these, I'm sure, influences the final taste. Now, if you ask me the following question, I might have to say, I don't know. The following question would be, all right, so you make these things feathery and say they are 1/8 of an inch. If they were 1/4 of an inch, would I taste the difference? The answer is I'm sure you would taste the difference, but what would that difference be? I'm not quite sure. We've had Chara before that isn't as refined as this, and it doesn't taste anywhere near what this tastes. Yes.
Is the featheriness trichomes?
No. Oh, the question is the featheriness trichomes? No, the trichomes are separate. They're the hairs. And that's the hairs that you see in the tea liquor. The featheriness, well, maybe we're using feathery in 2 different ways. I see just the delicateness, and I'm calling it delicateness of the leaves as hopefully that's what you're meaning by feathery. If you're meaning all of the trichomes, well, then obviously the white hairs in here, obviously that is, those are trichomes. But I view this as feathery just from the shape of the leaves and how they behave in the water and how they behave when you put water in, because they spin around almost as if you're in a storm of some sort. It's just really a beautiful tea aesthetically. And we haven't even gotten to tasting. All right, so timer was already set. You should have set it for 2 minutes. It's almost up. And remember, once this timer goes off, as it has, you're not in a huge hurry to separate the leaves from the tea liquor. Just want to be steady when you're doing this, consistent.
这一定要有沫，因为它是毛发，
一定要什么？
有沫，因为有毛。
Yeah, so it really, the hairs on this, the trichomes on this do make this seem hairy. And when you're handling this, you need to handle this delicately as well. All right, so first thing you do is evaluate the leaves. And you see how they stick to one another. They stick to one another clumpy. They're clumpy because of the delicateness of this. And this smell is just so unique. I mean, when you're thinking of green teas, I ask you, have you ever had a green tea that really has this type of smell? And there's several things going on with this smell. Again, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, so I'm going to wait for you to tell me. And then you go through the quality assessment. You enter the quality arena and you start to make determinations about this tea.
Love the action of the leaves falling and swirling as the tea brews.
Love the action of the leaves swirling and falling as it brews. It is aesthetically stunning. I love the activity of these leaves. And when we encountered this tea the first time, again, the tea leaves are so feathery and so small. This can only occur if you're getting a spring pick, right? And first spring pick. As you go further into the spring, the leaves are getting longer. The buds are getting longer. You cannot make it with this delicateness if you're using leaves that are bigger. And that's what's so unique about this. And this is how we nailed right away this year that the sample that we got was inadequate. And so we weren't able to backfill this year. And we're sad about that, but that's okay. Next year will be a different story. This year was messed up by the fact that they weren't able to get pickers. And when you're not able to get pickers, what happens? The sun doesn't stop shining. The enzymes in the plant don't stop talking to the plant. So that means the leaves reacting to heat and photosynthesis and all the elements within the leaf are continuing to grow. And it doesn't matter that the rest of the world is suffering outside from COVID. These leaves are still going to grow. And if you get them later, the result will not be this taste. And the result will not be this aesthetic. I mean, it's a close second. Well, it's not even really a close second. Let me put it this way. It's within the top 5, but it's not a number 1 or a 2 in terms of both appearance and in terms of this taste. You'd be surprised at how far away. And the claim was, when we inquired, was, oh, it just picked a few days later. But the flavor told us, yeah, that's true, but whatever happened in that few days was a lot of activity and has influenced what the end result. This is one of these things where when you taste at this level, there is no going back, because once you've had that taste in your mouth, how do you get rid of that quality? How do you taste something that's lesser quality and say, oh yeah, this is okay. This is okay. In Sophie's, that phrase is nearly criminal. This is okay. We don't do okay here. We do great. And remember, it's not us, by the way. The leaves do the talking. That's what happens here at the shop. Yes.
The dry leaves smelled fresh. Both dry and wet leaves had and have a buttery aroma.
Wow, starting off great. fresh was the aroma of the dry leaves, very fresh. And then buttery, and what was the other portion?
Buttery aroma.
A buttery aroma, great description. And I always have that feeling of butteriness in my mouth. And by the way, if you ask me now, what exactly was different this year? Well, they were using margarine instead of butter.
Teas while brewing remind me of a kelp bed at the Monterey Bay Aquarium.
Okay, so while brewing this tea, I'm assuming the visual reminded this commentator of a kelp bed. So lots of activity going on. Wonderful, yes.
The scent is light grass, light malt, and a kind of round chocolate butter background.
Light grass, light malt, and a round chocolate butter background is the scent of the wet leaves.
And the participants find it challenging to pick out the individual components because they're highly blended in the experience.
Wow, I love this comment. So the commentator implies in the comment the question, how do you separate all the different things that are going on in this, because there's so much going on with this. Yes, it is a beautiful blend of all of these different flavors, and you captured some of those, and I particularly love the butteriness portion that you put out there, and there is a little bit of grassiness, but the grassiness which is very restrained, and you captured malt. That's great. There is malt in this. So you are beginning to pull those apart. It's amazing.
Definitely a fresh aroma and taste, a refreshing tea.
Fresh aroma and taste, top it off. A refreshing tea. Absolutely.
What is the pick of this tea and when? I'm curious if it's similar to white tea owing to the hairy texture.
So this questioner is wondering if this has a relationship to white tea because of the texture and the delicateness of the leaves, and is asking when exactly is this pick? This pick was in the early part of March. I believe it was around the 7th, 8th, or 9th. I can't remember which of those 3 days in particular this particular batch came from, but it was in that section, very first pick. Now, because of Fujian's position, what does that mean? The microclimate position is really what I'm talking about. In Zhenghe and Fuding, the very first pick is usually in February. So it's earlier yet, unless of course it's raining. If it's raining, then that can delay. So there is a difference, and really, let's back up because I left out the most important thing. The most important thing is not just the microclimate, because the microclimate of this area is incredible. It's like the Wui Mountains in that there's fog X number of days a year, it's damp, but it's also the soil terroir. And it's different from the Fujian soil terroir. So you're getting that in this tea.
While not very strong, I find the refreshing nature of this tea is similar to mint. I didn't detect any grassiness in the aroma or the dry leaves or the flavor.
So while not very strong, this commentator says they definitely get almost a mintiness. Is that correct? Almost a mintiness out of this. And so let me clarify that, because I think I understand how this commentator is thinking about this. Because they said they didn't get grassiness.
From the refreshing nature of it.
From the refreshing nature of it, okay. And I actually was, that's interesting. I was going to go there. And the commentator noted no hint of grassiness to them. It's really that refreshing nature. And I like this comment because you're bringing us back to one of the elements, and this is one of a few elements that make this green tea so different from other green teas. We have other green teas that are refreshing, but not quite like this. This is refreshing at a point where then the flavors back themselves in. So, okay, let me restate that so it's very clear. Refreshing first, that's the lead, and then all these flavors. Yes.
I taste sweetness and I feel a very subtle astringency.
Sweetness and subtle astringency. I like this because this isn't in your mouth. Oh, well, wait a minute. It is in your mouth. It isn't aggressive astringency. What it is after you've taken a couple sips, you're thinking to yourself, he didn't trick me. This really is Camellia sinensis. There really is a drying of the mouth, but it's light and it reflects, again, this early pick, and it reflects the elegance of their processing methodology. This tea, as green teas go in this shop, is just so special. And I think it's the blend of all of these things that are going on at the same time, which makes you understand, or makes anybody who understands this tea or who tries this tea, has them understand that green tea has the ability to be very different than stereotype of green tea. No hints of bitterness, no discord in this tea at all. Nothing. This, if I were sentenced to not be able to drink Cliff teas and was only given one other choice, you know what? Right here, Chara. This has enough going on to be interesting for me to be able to explore while I'm drinking it, and it's a thoroughly enjoyable tasting experience. All right. We're going to go back to science for a minute, just because I have no self-control, and you already knew that I was going to head back there.
Wait, before you go, food pairing, please.
Oh, food pairing. Oh, now this is a really interesting question, because when I think of this with a food pairing, you can't pair this with anything that's very sweet, because the sweetness will interfere with that sense of freshness and uniqueness of this tea. So you have to, it's almost as if you need a really top quality croissant that has no sweetness, that's just buttery in and of itself, puffed up, and so it doesn't have a lot of focus in your mouth. That would go just great with this. The other thing which would be nice, and now this is going to seem strange, and you're probably going to wonder, how in the world did he come up with that? It's just me. And you understand it's just me. Pears. Pears will go real well with this. So if you cut up a plate of sliced pears and serve it with this, I believe that that would be a spectacular after lunch, after brunch, dessert, along with a tea that would be able to hold itself with that. Yes.
Why Chara? What does the name mean?
Okay, so Chara refers to a constellation in the sky, doesn't it? And let's see, let me think. What is the name of that constellation in regular English? Isn't that the dog constellation? It is the dog constellation. I think it's the smart dog constellation. Hence, Chara. That's how this name came about. Yes.
This tea is filling me with motivation to do things. It's a different energy, a different energetic than the black tea I had yesterday, for which the outcome was philosophical discussion.
I love this comment because green tea in general tends to be more energizing than any of the other types of tea. This commentator talks about the energy that comes after drinking this tea. I feel that energy when I drink this tea, as opposed to the philosophicalness that the commentator felt yesterday when enjoying a cup of red tea. Was it red tea? Black tea. And there's clearly a difference. You know, the energetics do count. And I don't mean to suggest to anybody that you're supposed to be able to divine energetics. That's not what I'm really talking about here. What I'm talking about is with a tea like this, typically, almost without exception, people end up saying, yeah, I feel more energy. I feel like doing more things. And part of that is the actual constituents within the tea itself. All right, so I'm about to slip back into science. I promise to make it short, unless you ask me a bunch of arcane questions, then that's on you. All right. So one of the things that people sometimes don't realize is that there's a real difference, a real quantity difference in constituents that come from teas, not between categories, but within categories. So I saw a test that was done in China, and they used bag tea, they used popular tea, Lipton's, Twinings, and then they used some loose leaf tea. And let me tell you the two things that they discovered. One is that the catechin content is so wildly different that you're going to be surprised by what I relate to you here. They have teas, and by the way, by weight, they were using the same amount, whether it was a tea bag or loose leaf tea. So the catechin difference isn't because of a weight difference. So let's get that out there up front. One other thing that's obvious to people. Catechin difference can be a result of the type of water you use. So if you are using very hard water, your catechin content will be less than if you use deionized water, for example. So you have to be aware and be able to account for all of these things. But assuming the same water, you have as low as, and now I'm talking about ECGC. And why do I keep picking on that? You know, it's got a rhyme in its name, EGCG. They should make a song about that. And it's just easy for me to remember. Oh, and by the way, by weight, usually EGCG is at least 20% by weight. And now I'm talking loosely. I don't know, I've never seen an exact figure for what it would be for tea bag. All right, so let's get back to the expressed EGCG in the tea liquor. So when they did this experiment in China, what they found, and I gave you all the balance factors, same water, same weight, the range was from 9 milligrams per same amount of liquid all the way up to 90. So let's put this in other terms, because we're Americans. We love our numbers. That means at the low end, 1/10 of what you're getting at the high end. 10 times more EGCG than some of the low quality stuff at 8.9. So really, it does matter what tea you use. It does matter quality. So I ask you this. Is it possible that by season and by pick, the amount of EGCG differs? But great question. By coincidence, it does. Those early picks are richest in the EGCG. So as we go through these things, I relay this information because you'll continue to see more articles about, oh, EGCG, that's the bomb in terms of anti-tumor, good for the heart, blah, 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 all these allegations of health benefits. And as you're thinking about it and thinking, well, okay, you know, for 5 cents, I can get a tea bag and go ahead and get my EGCG. You can. It's just, you'll get 1/10 of a higher quality earlier pick. So all of these elements make a difference. And as you see studies, look for the following things. What type of water were they using? What volume, and was it even across the examples that they're testing? So let's see, before I get too far down this road, are there any questions? Nothing? Okay, that's fine. Just wanted to point these things out to you. In fact, I think what we're going to do is stop on this, because the next subject I want to go is going to take me 15 or 20 minutes to get through. I don't want to do that. And we have 2 more weeks of green teas. So the real value of what you had today was, if anybody says to you, oh, green tea, I just can't do green tea. My doctor orders me to do green tea. I just can't do it. You know, I'm too bitter, too this, too that. Well, now you have proof. You can demonstrate something to them that they can do. This, by the way, the one comment that I didn't hear about this, and this is the last thing, and then I will truly wrap up, is it has, just from my perspective, just that slightest tinge of a roasty aftertaste. And I love that about this green tea. There's nothing primary in that. It comes as you, almost as an afterthought. All right. Love starting off with Chara on this set of green teas. Next week's is no exception in terms of drinkability, ease of approach, and interestingness, because it's a green tea from Yunnan. Remembering this is a green tea from the border of Canton province, Hunan province. They all have these wonderful, unique stories, and they all have these hidden health benefits, but more important than anything. And remember, here at Sophie's, yes, we do talk science, we do talk alleged health benefits, but at the end of the day, what do we really talk about? Enjoyment of the taste. That's how you're going to get the health benefit, if there is a health benefit, because you love the taste and just naturally you consume. All right, so you've heard how maybe catechins in green tea interact with COVID. This is, again, let's be very clear. It's not a preventative of COVID, but it seems to, according to this Italian study, speed the process and keep it controlled so that you don't have other issues. For example, long COVID that occur. So with that in mind, let's make this upcoming week a green tea week. And in addition, let's wear our masks and use the normal precautions, because I would love to see all of you next week at Green Town. All right now, nice to see you. Have a great week. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
All right, everybody.